All right, everybody, it's showtime. Welcome, glad y'all are here. I mentioned this a second ago, but this is the first session of the product track for Denver Startup Week 2022. We are back in person for the first time in 3 years, which is really exciting, so glad y'all are here. My name's Ryan. I am one of the co-chairs of the product track. Just getting us kicked off to essentially thank our sponsors. Then I'll get out of the way, and Eric's going to go through his really cool presentation. So maybe just on your second slide there.
Yeah.
We would not be here today if it wasn't for this list of amazing sponsors. And I want to specifically call out Pi Insurance, who sponsors the product track. For anyone looking for, I think it's insurance for small businesses, check out Pi Insurance. But otherwise, Capital One, Dell Technologies, and of course the Downtown Denver Partnership. Denver Startup Week is the largest free startup-focused event in the world. And the reason that it's free is because of these amazing sponsors up here. So that's it for me. I'm going to hand it over to Eric Finch from Parcel. Oh, look, there's more sponsors.
More sponsors.
Okay, more and more sponsors. Check them out. You'll see this exact slide a number of times throughout the week. So thank you to all of them, and showtime for Eric. Thanks
Cool.
for being here.
Great. All right. Thank you, everyone, for being here. To start off, I've got a question for all of you that we'll use later. Wanted to plug it at the beginning here. Follow that link. It's one question. Please feel free to add it in. Okay, so I'll start with a little about me. I'm a product manager at Parcel. I've been doing product for almost 10 years. I was just remembering that in my first job at a software company, not really working on the software at all, I actually got to go to the intro breakfast for the very first Denver Startup Week. So now we're on the 11th annual, and it's kind of crazy to see that time fly. That was a mobile app that I worked on. It was acquired by Aetna. Got to sort of see this transition from small team to sort of the big enterprise and kind of work in between both of those. And then I've worked in a tool for pharmacists in hospitals and managing remote workflows for them. And then I'm currently working at Parcel, which is a data-driven insurance company that provides temperature monitoring with a hardware and software solution. So I'll talk a little bit about the complexity that comes with that, as sort of an intro into what we're getting into. And then I just thought I'd touch on kind of my path a little bit, because I think that's always interesting. Every product person has a different story around that. So I studied psychology. I thought I was going to go into public health. Did some public health data things for the state of Colorado, and sort of from that transitioned into content management. Really pretty much data entry at iTriage, the startup I was talking about. And within that role, really got into customer service. So I've always found a lot of people kind of start in that customer responsiveness role in product. And I thought it was a really good start for me because I was able to do the day-to-day work of customer service, but then once I was able to take some of that information and try to bubble it up, that's when I think I really started doing product, quote unquote. So went from there, worked as a product owner for a few teams there. And that's sort of been my way up into product management is through the more specific product owner role. So I have myself a bit more experience working with the engineering team, executing on different things. And so now in my role as a senior product manager, getting more into the strategy side, implementing more of the longer term vision, and kind of learning all of the challenges that come along with that. So I do want to start quickly just about Parcel. It's been a really interesting challenge. I've been there 2 and almost a half years now. Like I said, it's a connected hardware solution. So we have temperature monitors, we have the firmware that drives all of that, and then the software that takes that data and visualizes it. So there's a lot of moving pieces that just add to the complexity of all the different things we think about in terms of the product we're building. And then on top of that, we work across several different markets. So we have a big presence in global health. So we have deployments in Africa. We do a lot of vaccine monitoring. That comes with its own challenges with lower infrastructure environments. And then we work with more commercial shippers who are surrounded by infrastructure, and they have tracking systems, and they have all the monitoring in place for that, but they need product level monitoring. And then on top of all of that, we're also an insurer. So all of that data feeds into the insurance we provide and gives us an edge there. So a lot of moving pieces both in the product itself and then in the way that we think about the market and the business and the strategy around it. So getting into what I'm actually going to talk about, this idea of the product muscle. At the beginning of this year, sort of as a New Year's resolution, I changed up the way I was approaching my fitness routine, started doing more weightlifting, and that was new to me, really like actual weightlifting, I was calling it, with barbells, and I was, I didn't go see a trainer, probably should have, but I did watch a lot of YouTube videos and found some that I like. And I found kind of this interesting idea in my head that a lot of the things that I was learning, hearing as best practices around general fitness kind of overlapped with some of the things that I'd been challenged by in product management. It can be really hard, and it can be something where day to day it can be grinding, grueling, but if you stick with it, then you can make progress and you can really do something cool and really see some results. So I want to touch on, this isn't necessarily like a framework. This isn't necessarily like tools to go prioritize your backlog or to set out your strategy. This is really about kind of the grind of the role and how having sort of a growth mindset and a mindset about making incremental improvement works well for building software, also works well for kind of keeping yourself sane as you're doing it. So to start with, this is the bit of participation here. So we'll see how this works out. See how many people. 19, awesome. Okay. Didn't think about the microphone, so we'll try this out. I'm going to grab these. See if we can find some groups between all of these. Let me know if anybody in the back can still see these a little bit. So usually I would try to facilitate this with somebody else grouping them, but just for, there's some easy ones. This is awesome. Okay, so I'll group some of these and then we'll see how much it maps up to what I'm wanting to do. Prioritization, competing priorities, building the right thing. I mean, that's almost, no, that's not prioritization. Engineers. Wow, this is awesome. I actually have one that's kind of prioritization focused. So, where was building the right thing? Where did I move that?
Moved it to prioritization.
Oh, well, that's going to be its own thing now. Buy-in, competing priorities. Put that there. Inventory levels. Detail. Communication. All right. How does that look to everybody? Any changes? No? Okay. Cool. So let's take these. Too many priorities. Perfect. Right here. Let's see, we had detail versus macro focus. Fits in here. Building the right thing. That can be its own little thing down here. And then I'm going to call this sort of stakeholder management right here. Involved in everything. And then I don't know exactly what this means. So if anybody wants to detail it, otherwise it's going to be its own little guy there. So I'm going to make this its own challenge here. So as we are going through everything, let's just keep, I'm going to go through each of these, but let's keep them in mind. All right, make that bigger. Okay, cool. That was a little participation. I'm glad that worked out. Okay, so I have, my grouping that kind of led to some of the things I'm going to talk about, but I wanted to give everybody here a chance to think about those same things and some of the challenges that are involved. And so it actually worked out that some of these really led to what I was thinking about. So I'll start with the priorities one, because I think that had a lot of input. So I put it as not too many priorities, not enough time. I think that really goes into everything you're involved in, all of the people you're working with who all kind of want something, the sort of sea of possibilities of things you could do, and then the limited resources to get all that done. That can be really hard, and it can make it feel like you're getting nothing done, even when you're knocking out each highest priority, because there's a million more priorities. This one, you're involved in everything. I mean, I think this is a pretty commonly talked about challenge in product management. You are a connector between different organizations, within different elements within the organization, and you have to be able to work with engineers, work with business people, work with marketing people, and again, that can be a big challenge because you may not have deep expertise in any of those areas, and so you're always going into it feeling like you're not the expert, which can be pretty hard. You're living in the now and the later. That's something I've been challenged by recently. I kind of talked about getting into more of the long-term thinking and the strategic vision. All of that takes thought, it takes energy, it takes time, and it always, to me, feels like less of an immediate priority than the engineering team's priorities. And that's like a mindset thing that I'm continuing to work on, because there's an important place for execution and making sure you're building the right thing. But even as I say that, building the right thing comes from a product person, giving some of the input from what we're learning about the customers in the business. So I'm trying to sort of shift my focus to be sure that I'm presenting the kind of content to that team that makes their work easier, and sort of let them do that work rather than being kind of in the weeds with it. And yeah, that really touches on building the right thing, right? I think that there's a lot of vagary in the right thing. It can mean a million things. So again, can be a challenge. So let me get back into my presentation here. Cool. So we'll get into the meat of it. Starting with this first one. So again, I'm going to go through a few of these things that are sort of similar between the sort of fitness idea and product management. And this, I think, is a really important one. That is a practice, not a performance. I think that too often, you can get really focused on the feature you're working on or the project that you have to ship by, the deadline, capital D deadline. And once you've hit that goal, or if you don't, and you have to keep working on it, it becomes your singular focus. And when it's done, you kind of feel a letdown. So it can kind of be like if you're training for a big race and you go do that race, it's done, and you don't know what's next. And I think it's important not to be too tied into that singular goal, and keep an eye out for the longer term goal you're trying to do, you're trying to focus on. So here I have create a program to work every muscle. I think that's something that if you're starting a training program, that's the first bit of advice you'll get, is to not just go to the gym and do whatever you feel like, or do a certain focus on one thing, but to work with someone or get input and really think about all of the goals that you could have for your general fitness, and make that program, and then importantly, stick with it and be consistent with it, and keep going. I think there's always work to be done, and there's always going to be another priority. There's always going to be another deadline after the one that you just worked your ass off to hit, and so you can't get too high or low with either of those things, and just have to work on sort of the flywheel that can maintain progress in the product. To that end, this is something I've been thinking about a lot. If something is important, make it a habit. So make time for it. I have not read the full book, but I've read at least a blog post summary of Atomic Habits, and I love all the ideas in it. And the idea of if something is important, make it easy to do. If something is not important or is a negative, make it hard to do. And so I think what this looks like to me is if there's something you think is important but you're not doing enough of, for me it's customer conversations, user researcher. One of my designers is right here, and I keep thinking about that when I look at him. We want to talk to more customers, and we want to get more of their direct input in the long-term vision that we have and the short-term usability concerns we're always thinking about. So what we're trying to do is set ourselves some goals of do one conversation a week, right? It's not a ton, but it's more than we're doing, and starting that habit will hopefully help it continue. And then I think this last point here is just important for anything you do in life, and it's not an easy thing to think about, but being focused on self-improvement or improvement in general in any process or thing you do can make you feel like you're doing it wrong, or you're bad, or it's not quite something you can be happy with in the moment. And I think it's important to realize that being focused on the things you do well is important. Having gratitude for the place that you're in right now is important, and there's always room to improve. So thinking about both of those things together, I think is really important. So I'm going to make these bigger for everybody. Cool. So the second one here is understand your goals. So in this last one, talking about the practice of it, and focusing on these small elements that you work on continuously. That is only really beneficial if you know where all of those small practices are leading towards. So really know why you're doing what you're doing, and I think that comes into the goals of the product, the long-term goals of the product, which again is something I'm really trying to clarify and articulate for the product I work on, because that high-level goal then can help everybody sort of go in the right direction. And I think that goes for even this smallest feature or meeting that you go to, or activity that you're doing. You should have a reason behind it. It shouldn't just sort of be something you do because you do it. So having that end goal in mind, I think, is really important. Measuring progress. This is a really common recommendation when starting any sort of fitness journey. Improvements are very incremental, and they take a long time to show up. You can. I was actually, of course, looking if there were some other similar analogies that people had around exercise. And of course, Simon Sinek, who has analogies for everything, was talking about how if you go to the gym for a day and come back and look in the mirror, you're going to look exactly the same. And that's going to be true for days and days and days. But if you compare a year of progress, you're going to see a difference. So I think it's important to know where you're starting, and then know the things that you want to measure for where you're going. And again, this is something that I'm continuing to work on. It's hard to get those measurements in place, because sometimes it feels like that's not the work, right? The infrastructure and the process to set up the measurement isn't getting the work done, and so it can feel like you're not really making progress. But if you're not measuring the progress, once you do the work to do the thing, you don't know if you've done the thing. So then next one, understanding trade-offs and specialization. I think this is This is like I was talking about my kind of fitness journey. I've played sports. I've done sort of cardio type exercise, and I decided I want to bulk up. I want to get stronger. And I've always been super skinny, so I decided that I would I do run slower now than I did a year ago. But I've been lifting weights and seeing the progress from that. So there's a way that the thing you focus on is going to be what you improve on. So similar to what I was talking about with really spending your time and energy and focus on the execution level of the day-to-day building of products. If you're focused on that, that's what you're going to improve on, and that could be really good. That could be really important for your organization, but you're going to end up specializing yourself as a product manager, and then your organization's improvement on that thing. So realizing that can be fine. That can be what's important and what's needed for your organization and what you can provide to the organization, but you want to make that consciously. And then the last one here, avoid focusing on the glamour muscles. This was something I had to train myself. I was like, I'm just going to go in, do bicep curls the whole time, get the guns. And what I learned watching the YouTube videos, importantly, a big arm is all about the tricep. I didn't know that. So you may not, the thing that you think is sort of the most important or sort of the flashiest thing may not be long-term what's most important. So I think about that as the feature requests from the big customer that in sometimes that's you do it, you get it done, and that's really good for the organization. Other times you should look at that and say nobody else is going to care about that. That is really just so that I can go to that customer and say, hey, look at what we built. Aren't we great? And it becomes much more about showing you're doing a good job rather than setting this foundation for progress over time. All right, next one, embracing novelty and discomfort. I found this to be just a really important part of the role of product manager. One of the challenges I noted was you are involved in a lot of different parts of the business and the organization, and you're going into all of those as not the expert. I think you're always talking with engineers, and I like to think I can hang in those conversations and provide value, but it's not about necessarily what I think in most situations. It's about getting the right people to have the right conversation so that they can provide their perspective and their expertise, and really help the whole team make progress. I think damaging your ego is always a concern, whether you think about it or not, but feeling uncomfortable in doing something new can be really challenging. I think if you're doing anything in fitness that is different, if you're starting something, if you're going to a gym for the first time, it'll feel really uncomfortable. If you try a new exercise that works something new, a new muscle that you haven't used, it's going to feel uncomfortable, and you're going to feel like you don't want to do that, right? You hear people say, I hate burpees, I hate lunges, I hate whatever it is. There's an importance to that to say, maybe that's something I need to work on. So anything that feels uncomfortable, one, that might just be the reality, and you kind of just get through it, and you find a way to bring the benefit and the value that you can in conversations that you're uncomfortable with. But also that discomfort may mean you want to spend some time learning about that thing, or working on that muscle. Complexity is the reality. I think this is really, really true for anybody who's tried a diet or a exercise program and seen nothing work. There's a million moving parts to it, right? And any one of those million things could be just off, and so you don't see what you want to see. And I think the same thing is true in any product you build, any team you work on. there's going to be a lot of factors that are involved. So the way you would think about it when you're doing exercise is, focus on something small and try to build it up, and have that be a foundation for, trying to make the next change. And I think the same thing is true for managing a complex project, complex product, large, disparate team. Start with small improvements and again measure them and see what can improve from that. Be open to learning. I think this is kind of part of the losing the ego. If you're going into a situation that is new to you, you might learn something in every conversation you have with people who are more expert in whatever position they're in. I think something that is always interesting to keep in mind is best practices are always changing, but kind of at the same time, there's a seed or root foundation of truth that kind of goes through all those best practices. And when you can find those things that are foundational to the ideas rather than chasing the specifics of any new framework or best practice. So the example I really think about is for dieting. There's always been like a low carb, low fat battle going on, and people are very, feel like one is superior to the other. And I think the newest research, as far as I can tell from my YouTube videos, is saying that it doesn't matter as long as you have a calorie deficit. So as long as you're eating less calories than you're expending in your daily activity, then you're going to lose weight. So I think there's sort of a seed of truth in a lot of practices for teams working together, a lot of the frameworks for prioritization and building things. There's a seed of truth that's shared within all of them. And if you can kind of find those nuggets, then you can make a lot of progress. All right, this is the last one, maintaining proper form. This is the one where I can kind of just cheat and put anything in here and say that's proper form. These are the ones that I'm picking. Understanding your role. So I've touched on this a couple times, but sort of knowing that, at least from my perspective, a product manager is somebody who can connect all the right people, have all the right conversations, and make sure everybody's keeping the perspective that's important across the organization. Part of that comes alongside the second one, which is really taking advantage of the right people who know certain things. So that comes from relationships that you build, understanding within your organization or outside your organization or within your network, trying to understand what people are good at and sort of keeping that in mind so that when you have situations that require those things to be worked on, you know the right person to go to. And it kind of puts you in a position where you can be a facilitator for the rest of the team. You can be an amplifier, right? And help a team, of all disparate skill sets build something more together. I don't think as a product manager you should, just out of your head have all the right answers. I think you should know the right place to look for those things, right? The right people to talk to. But in most organizations, most product managers are not going to have the $1 million idea just from nothing. It involves the practice of working with other people. I think that said, it's important to remember that all of those experts that you work with in different parts of the organization don't have the same breadth of perspective that you do. And this is something I forget all the time. I expect that the engineer I'm talking to, of course they know something that marketing told me yesterday, but they weren't they don't talk to those people often. And so knowing that yes, you may not be the expert in all these different areas, you do have visibility into more of them. And so that can give you a unique perspective and can give you something where you can really bring value to that team. Avoiding unfocused activity, you know, when I think about this in terms of exercise, I think about, you know, if you going to the gym, getting on a bike, as, you know, as slowly as possible and sitting there on your phone for an hour. You are doing activity. It's better than nothing, but you're not going to be, you know, moving yourself in some direction compared to if you set a training plan, if you're doing a step in that plan. And, you know, I think where this really shows up is the feeling of feeling busy all the time is really common in product management because you are involved in so many different things. There's, you know, I've heard of people who, you know, go to meetings during the day, answer emails, and do work at night. And I've always tried to make that sort of not my reality as a product manager because, again, you're going to get burnout. It's going to feel like you're never getting anything done because you're just always in this sort of churn of responding to things, sitting in meetings. And so this kind of goes back to the goals that you want to get towards are sort of the foundation that you can build what sort of practice and activity work towards those things and what things that don't. In my current role, I really appreciate that everybody that I work with and, you know, the leaders that I work with are not tied to any one practice or meeting especially. We cancel a lot of meetings. They crop up again in sort of the same, you know, format, but maybe with a different person or maybe with a different agenda. I think it's always good to be rigorously examining all of those things that you're doing on a day-to-day basis and seeing if they're actually moving you in the direction you want to do. And then, you see that? Oh my gosh, so close. Last one here, take rest. You know, I think that that's something that's always talked about in exercise. You can try to do, you know, you can work out every day, and it's going to burn you out, and you're, you know, not going to give your body the chance to respond, build muscle, you know, get the you know, repair all the damaged muscle fibers, all of that. Rest is an important component of it, and I think that's true in sort of the grind of product management too. Give yourself a chance to live your life and, you know, get to know your coworkers and have, you know, a less focused sort of time in your day-to-day so that when you really are in it, you can be focused on it. That is the end. Any questions? I do want to leave some time here. Yeah, thank you. Any questions? Yes, you, sir.
In your experience, what's been the hardest muscle for you or other product managers around you to work on?
Yeah, I mean, I think the one that I brought up about sort of engaging the strategic muscle has been the hardest. I think especially when you're it's not something that has to be done tomorrow. You know, I think it can be really easy to say, you know, the comment that was left on the, you know, story from the engineer, that I want to respond to that today. I want to respond to that right now so that they can get back to work. Or, you know, if the feature that's in progress that I'm trying to, you know, get out to customers, that's the priority because once it's out there, it's, you know, bringing value to a customer. I think you have to find time and make time for that sort of longer term thinking, and that's been a challenge for me. Yeah.
How have you found the best way to like track progress in these muscles?
That's another thing I'm still, you know, working on. We do in my organization now. We're doing OKRs, and that's been a good sort of company level driver of focus. I think that to me has been the kind of biggest benefit. I think we are still working on our product team OKRs. I think we could be better at making KRs that we know we can track and actually tracking them. I think sometimes we come up with the goal that we want to hit, and that goal is probably right, but we don't have the infrastructure in place to measure that yet. And so we've had a few quarters where the entire time is sort of focused on setting up that measurement like I was talking about. And so by the end of the quarter, you haven't made any progress because you're just setting things up. So I think a few of the things that we track are like specific things within our system. So we want a certain percentage of the shipments we monitor to have all the right data to bring value. And so we do like percentages based on that. And then we're trying to get more use out of our analytics tool and have more sort of user-based. We're at a really exciting time where we have customers, like a lot of customers now, and so we have a lot of users where before it was really hard to measure sort of like a small change that you make having an impact, and now we're trying to set up things to really take advantage of that because we are getting quite a bit more usage, but it's a challenge. Yes.
What techniques or strategies do you have for balancing like the plan that you've been on versus the latest feature to come up? So you might have a potential customer says, "Oh, do you have this feature?"
Yeah.
It's like, "Oh, let's quick get that in."
Yeah, I think we see that all the time, and I think there's like my mind always goes two directions. One is like, of course we should do that thing, right? And sometimes that's really the right call because it is a small thing to do. It brings value right away. But if you do just that, then you don't have time to work on the larger things. So I think we've focused on it as trying to have. We talk a lot about rocks, pebbles, and sand, like a lot of those metaphors. So we try to have like one or two big rocks that we're focused on that are those like big goals, and then like the pebbles and the sand that are smaller things that can be fit in. I think there's, it's always too much, which is probably the hard thing, is that we fill the bucket too full. But trying to keep an eye on those things that are bigger, longer term value, and sort of not have those get overwhelmed. I think you just kind of have to do it. And I think the way you do it is you consider that outcome that you have in mind. So, Rob works with me, so it's silly to kind of use a metaphor or an example from the work we do, but we've put work into, like I was talking about, the context data that goes along with these shipments. We've put effort into automating that based on existing information that we have or information that's been entered, up front during onboarding, and that the like structure of all of that automation takes a long time to put together, and you don't see a lot of value from it immediately. But then once we've released some of it, you get immediate impact on 1,000 shipments rather than making the manual process easier. So I think it's just keeping an eye on the expected impact of the bigger things so that you can keep focused on them. Cool. Well, I do have another form up here with some questions. I put my email address there. That's the best way to get in touch with me if you do have any questions that are that you specifically want answered. And then otherwise I can respond to any of the feedback in the form as well. I'll hang out for a little bit if anybody has any other questions. Otherwise, thank you so much for coming.